You'll know when you have a wild woman. She'll practice her craft without boundaries. She is truly autonomous.
Her loyalty is only to the family she serves, a midwife who will not allow herself to be held back by a system she didn't create.
This podcast is for the birth keepers who want to grow and change. We are open to learning through self-reflection and supportive community. We are creating this space to explore without judgment. We are remembering we were
born wild. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Born Wild podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sophia, and today I have with me Alex, and I can't wait to dive into our conversation. Welcome, Alex, and will you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name's Alex. Thanks for having me. I'm sure we'll get into this, but I had a home birth VBAC, and it was just a very wonderful and wild experience, and I'm very passionate about sharing that with other people because it's definitely not anything I ever thought that I would have done.
Yeah. So how did you end up to share this story? Like, when did you know you wanted to be a mother? Have you always known? Was it the day you found out you were pregnant? Like, where does your journey start?
I feel like I always knew I wanted to be a mom or that I would have kids. I mean, it wasn't ever anything I ever thought too much about, but I never thought that I wouldn't. And so, I mean, I feel like our story is just pretty typical. We were married for about 5 years, and then it was just, it's probably time to start, thinking about having kids if we want to. And so I had my first back in October of 2021, and then just had my second this past May. She just turned 1 last week.
Mm. Congratulations. Yeah. So exciting. Yeah. I feel like it's like a survival award, like we survived the first year because it's so big.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes. And she is like night and day difference than my son. She's so active, and it kind of feels but it's wonderful. But yeah, definitely. So,
so what did your first pregnancy look like?
So my first pregnancy, I mean, fairly normal. We got pregnant very easily. Fairly normal pregnancy, but then I don't even know the exact timeline, probably somewhere end of second trimester. I started having some hypertension, lots of swelling, and then it reached the point where it was like exactly 38 weeks. I don't even remember what my blood pressure was, but it was crazy high, and it was like, okay, you need to go to the ER. So we went to the ER that night, and it was like 180 over, whatever it was dangerously high. I felt totally fine. So that's kind of what threw me for a loop. And then, I mean, I feel like, your typical story, they induced me. I got the epidural, didn't really move around a lot. Baby wasn't descending. They said, you need a C-section, which hindsight, like looking back, I remember my OB was like, we either do the C-section now or we're going to have to wait until after my next C-section in a couple of hours. But she was like, you can pick, but I definitely felt the pressure to do it now. And now thinking back on it, I'm like, okay, well, if I had, hours to where like I didn't have it, it was not an emergency.
Right.
It wasn't. But right. I was so beyond stressed. My doula ended up not coming until like the very last minute.
Oh no.
When it was already decided. So my husband didn't know what to do. We were so stressed. So we ended up giving into the C-section, did the C-section, worst experience of my life. Like I hated every second of it. And then my recovery was actually very easy. So I don't have complaints about that, but we ended up leaving the hospital like a day early, went home.
And just to pause you, any like specifics about the C-section and what was horrible about it, other than like, obviously that wasn't your plan, but like.
I think, and I don't say this to like scare people because I know that everybody's experience is different. And I've also heard people, I've had friends that have had scheduled C-sections and they were like, that had, emergency
Mhm.
C-section prior, and they're like, it's night and day difference. I mean, it was like a wonderful experience. So I think it didn't help that I had been laboring. I think I got up to like 8 centimeters. Not that
Mhm.
says anything, but I'd been laboring for almost 24 hours. And then it was just, I'm sure it was the medication they gave me. I was throwing up the whole time. And
Mhm.
then I felt like, and I know it was probably more of just a mental thing, but I felt like I could feel everything. And
Mhm.
I think it was more like, obviously, you can feel like the pressure. So I think it was like in my mind, because I'm very, and I mentioned this you earlier. My dad's a holistic dentist, and I work for him, and I'm very medically minded. And so I think that I like knew what was going on. And so mentally, I was like convincing myself I could feel everything. So I was just very, very uncomfortable. This is so sad, but it's the truth. Whenever they delivered Miles, I remember, maybe I said it out loud, who even knows, but I remember at least thinking, like, do not show him to me. Do not put him on me. I cannot, not that I didn't want to see him, but it's like, I cannot focus
Mhm.
on anything else other than just getting through this.
Mhm.
And so, I didn't hold him or anything until after they had sewed me back up. I think I was holding him when they wheeled me out. I was honestly so out of it. But like looking back on it, like that's just so sad that my son was just born, and my first thought is like, I don't want to see him. I don't want to touch him. Do not put him anywhere
Mhm.
near me. And I know that sounds harsh, and obviously I love him. We have a great
But I
relationship.
think it's important to share these things because I can guarantee there are women out there who maybe feel alone in that thought,
Yeah,
and feel bad about that thought. And
yes. And it doesn't make you, I've talked with so many women that have had similar experiences, and it doesn't make you any less of a mom. It doesn't make you a bad mom. It's just
yeah.
you were, and I was in the middle of a very traumatic situation. And so,
You're like in survival mode having surgery. I mean,
literally,
like what other surgery would you have where someone would then hand you your child,
right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and so, that's
Yeah.
what it was.
We
And
were
then,
actually just talking about, we were like debriefing clients and things and discussing like cesareans and talking about the benefits though of having experienced labor before a
yeah,
C-section for the baby,
yeah.
like
Oh,
that,
hmm
like what a, because sometimes it can feel like all that for nothing, mentality of like, all right, I did all that and I
yeah,
still had a C-section. What was the point of that? But there are some benefits to, having your baby experience labor contractions to prepare them for the outside and for breathing. And so if
yeah,
anyone out there has gone through labor to end
yeah.
up in a C-section, sometimes that can bring a little bit of comfort to know that it wasn't for nothing. It benefited your baby.
100%. Absolutely. Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, but then you said your recovery was pretty
Yeah.
smooth.
Recovery was great. I mean, like, I remember it was probably the very next day. And I was just like, I was in there by myself. Maybe my husband was in there, but there was no nurses or anything. And I was just like, I need to get up, which I'm sure was kind of maybe an instinctual thing of my body saying, like, this is how you're going to best heal. But I
Hmm.
remember I like got up. Obviously, I just had major surgery, so it wasn't super comfortable, but I got up and I was like walking around. And I remember the nurse came in and she was like, oh, I was coming in here to like see if you were ready to get up. But here I think they kind of were like, oh, you probably shouldn't have done that when we weren't in here. But um, I honestly felt great other than being sore and it kind of hard to like get up. But once I was up, I was fine. And then we were discharged a day early because I was just ready to get home. And then it was that very next day, my blood pressure spiked again. And I went back to the hospital and ended up being in there for, it felt like a month, but I think it was like 5 days. magnesium drip, all of that. And
Were you diagnosed with preeclampsia prenatally or postpartum? And like, were you monitoring your blood pressure at home?
I was monitoring my blood pressure at home. It's funny. I honestly should request my records. It's been what now, 3.5 years.
Mm.
I don't know, I guess for sure if I had preeclampsia because I did like my 24-hour urine test. And then the day that I dropped it off is when my blood pressure spiked and I called and they said, you need to go to the hospital. And then I was induced. And then it was just like,
Yeah.
craziness for the next month.
Yeah.
So I actually don't know like what my protein levels were. But I did have severely high blood pressure and lots of swelling. So probably did. But they did like the magnesium drip and all of that, which everybody told me the magnesium drip is like horrible. You're going to feel like you're on the flu, whatever. I felt absolutely nothing.
It just like goes to show everybody's body's so different, you know?
It's so different. So if you have to do that and people are telling you it's going to be terrible, it might not be. So I don't know. I don't like it when people try to instill fear. I mean, I guess it's good to be prepared, but
yeah, I guess like better to think that way and then be pleasantly surprised versus have no idea.
Yeah, but it was fine. The worst part, honestly, was that I felt totally fine. Like I remember joking with the nurses and the doctors that were coming in because when I went to the hospital that second time, there was like a point where, and that was another thing. I didn't have Miles with me the first night into the next day that I went back to the hospital.
Mm.
So I was separated from him for like, I mean, less than 24 hours, but still.
Was he not there because you guys were just hopefully it would be like a quick thing and you'd be home?
Yeah, it was like 10 p.m. My husband stayed home with him. My friend took me to the ER because I thought, yeah, it was just going to be like I don't know, they'll give you medication and send me home. And I didn't want a newborn in the emergency room where who knows what's there. And then it just ended up being, I don't know what my blood pressure was. I just know that at one point there was like 15 people in the room and they were like wheeling me somewhere else. I'm like, it was crazy. So I'm pretty sure it was bad. But I was like joking because everyone was like, are you lightheaded or how do you feel? And I was like, if I hadn't monitored my blood pressure at home, which is the scary part, I guess, of preeclampsia or hypertension, it's like, you could have given me my tennis shoes and I probably could have gone on like a mile jog.
Mm-hmm.
And I had just had a C-section 2 days earlier.
Mm-hmm.
But anyways, we ended up being in the hospital for like 5 or 6 days. And the worst part was just, I felt totally fine. And I was just ready to like get on with our life and enjoy our baby at home. And so that was just a really emotional time. And I truly was like, we're just going to be living at the hospital now for the rest of our life. But obviously that was not true.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like I could talk for hours on this. And then, we leave the hospital and after all of that stress and everything, and I was given some very terrible breastfeeding advice in the hospital. And so I think it was Miles's Miles was just like cried all the time. It was so stressful. It was his month appointment, I think, and he had only gained 1 ounce more than his birth weight. And so obviously he was not getting what he needed. I didn't know what I didn't know. I know so much more now, but when you're, a new parent, you don't know what you don't know. We had a lactation consultant come to our house. That was a very stressful situation. She like walked in, I remember, and she was like, do I smell essential oils? And I was like, yeah, we have a diffuser on. She's like, yeah, we might want to consider calling poison control.
Oh, whoa.
And I was like, okay, well, let's not say that the very first thing when you walk in, which it obviously ended up being fine. We did not call poison control, but just so many things.
Yeah, but just like a new mom, sensitive emotions, my baby's not gaining weight, like.
Yes. And so that was like a horrible experience too. We like she ended up leaving, and we were like going to do the SNS system,
Mhm.
the straw, and like
Yeah,
whatever.
for anyone who doesn't know, that's a supplemental nursing system.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. You like basically it's like a tiny little tube that we were putting in like a bottle of breast milk, and then it would be like up like on my nipple. So he was nursing, but then also getting the extra like pumped breast milk. That lasted one night, and I was so stressed. I was like, I can't do this. So we did end up supplementing formula with him, which it's so funny because I feel like before you have kids, you have so many things of like, I will never do this.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of mine. It's like, we will never use formula. Like, I will die on that hill. And then,
Yeah.
here we are using formula. But I always like to say that at least in this situation, in this one birth, formula saved my breastfeeding journey. But because once that pressure was relieved, I did go on to nurse him until almost 2. And so I would like to encourage, because I think sometimes there's a stigma of formula, and there can be a time and a place. So
Yeah.
I always like to
And
encourage.
also for anyone out there who's listening, sometimes people will choose donor milk too if they have the luxury of, knowing people who have breast milk on hand, and there's like, online groups and things out there. If you're comfortable with that, that is an option too. Because I was able to get donor milk for my son, and it was great.
Yeah, that's my cousin's donor milk. There's actually a girl at my church that overproduces, so I go and pick up her donor
Mm-hmm.
milk and then take it to my cousin. So yeah, absolutely. Um, Anyways, once we got past all of that, um, then things were great. And my son's 3.5, and he's amazing. And I obviously have regrets in the sense of like, I would not want to go through that again. But at the same time, I do feel like I learned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like I've been able to talk to a lot of moms who felt or experienced similar births. And I've seen a lot of good come out of it. I feel like more good than bad came out of my first birth. So
Yeah, and it takes the like years of processing and being removed from the situation and seeing how healthy your child is, to be able to find the takeaways from it.
absolutely. And if anybody experienced a similar situation, or you're like roughly first out of it, there is no shame in seeing a counselor, because I went and saw, my husband is a counselor, but so we're very pro counseling in this family. But I saw a counselor specifically for
Not your husband though.
and it was a great experience. I think because I definitely knew I wanted to have more kids, but I was in a place where it's just like, I think that I am just going to be like overcome with fear and anxiety if I'm pregnant again, of like, is this going to happen? And she
Well, because
helped.
they talk about the reoccurring rates if you experience hypertension, preeclampsia, and have another pregnancy, how often it is to return.
Yep. Yeah.
Did they kind of like prep you and say that you're more likely to experience it again?
Well, I switched, and we can get into that, because I like switched my prenatal and care team completely. And my midwife did not. She was very much, which I appreciate, very proactive of like, we're not just gonna, well, even because that was the thing with my OB. It was like, okay, well, yeah, your blood pressure is getting high, just monitor it at home. If it reaches this point, call us. And then if it reaches this point, go straight to the ER. My midwife is like, well, we're gonna do things now when we don't even have high blood pressure, to hopefully prevent that. And then if we do start to see it creep up, we're going to start doing, X, Y, and Z, so that, hopefully we don't even get to this. And I was like, well, yeah, that makes sense. But
so talk with me around like your decision, because I can imagine that somebody who had your experience could be scared out of the idea of a home birth and be like, I'm like high risk, like, and like kind of hold on to that like this is probably going to happen again, or I need another C-section or whatever it is. So how did you make the jump away from that to actually be like, no, this isn't just my destiny. Like I don't have to end up in this situation again. Like
yeah.
how did you move away from that?
Well, I knew like whatever we first got pregnant, even before when we started talking about it, that I wanted to change, well, the OB that I was seeing, she doesn't even see babies anymore, or deliver babies anymore. But I would not have gone back. And I actually, well, I did not plan. I was planning on a hospital birth up until my third trimester.
Oh.
So that was a little interesting. But
why? What was it? Because a fear of anything, or more like this is what you do, routine, and I did it before?
No, it was a fear. I
It's a
am
fear.
very well, and I think we all are to some extent, but I'm definitely a very like I really like to be in control, and I do not like being out of control, and I like knowing that there's a plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G, whatever. And in my mind, it was like the hospital has like anything that could happen, the hospital is equipped for that. And that I thought brought me peace, but I can get into that more because I remember my midwife saying something to me that was like a huge light bulb moment. And that's kind of when I started to shift things. But when I first found out I was pregnant, I actually booked, I had a consultation booked with a midwife group here in DFW, and they deliver like solely out of hospitals. And they're amazing. They're one of the top providers for VBACs, and they deliver at a hospital here in DFW that is like known. Like if you want a VBAC, this is the hospital you want to be at. There's many people that they can't find providers or they can't get in with a VBAC provider, and they'll just walk into this hospital. They're known for that. So that was my plan. But such a God thing, I feel like. My cousin, she had a home birth. And so through that, I followed her midwife, who then ended up becoming my midwife on Instagram. And one night I was just looking through, and she had announced, or maybe this was probably a while back, she had announced that she was bringing on a new midwife. And it was actually the midwife who I saw at my OB's office through the majority of my pregnancy with Miles. And I remember saying to my husband, if Amber, who's the midwife, and she is the one that ended up delivering Evelyn, I was like, if Amber says we need to do X, Y, or Z, it's like, I trust her with my life. And then you know how it goes. It just so happened she was not on call. The night everything went down, the head OB I had not seen her throughout my entire pregnancy. It was just, whatever.
Yeah.
So I had known that Amber had left my OBs and was now a home birth midwife with Terry, who was my cousin's midwife. So they were kind of already on my radar of just kind of like, oh, that's fun. And then that night, I had already had my consultation scheduled with this other midwife group. I saw that they just announced that they were starting to offer hospital births.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, okay. Because Molly, like that's my cousin, said so many great things about Terry, but I was like, I don't want a home birth. So when I saw this, I was like, okay, I'm going to make, just a consult to talk and just see. So I had that.
Amber, I'm guessing, is a CNM, and so she has hospital privileges, and they were kind of trying to do a best of both worlds.
The same hospital that she delivered like Miles at. And so that's like a whole other thing. They ended up not going through with it because the hospital wanted to put too many stipulations on them that they were not comfortable with. So it ended up not going through anyways.
But it's what enticed you. Yeah.
Yeah. It's what enticed me. And it ended up working out well because I decided on a home birth before they even found out we're not doing this anymore. But yeah, it enticed me. So I made the consult, had that consult before the other one that I'd made. And it was just like, I met with Terry, who's like the main midwife there. And I'm not a super emotional person. I do not cry easily at all. And she made me like tear up, which never happens. And I just left and immediately booked with her and canceled my other consultation. I didn't even have it because I just felt so at peace. And she was so just, it was just so different, so personable. I think we met for at least an hour, if not more. She was so encouraging. Already was giving me things. I mean, she wasn't my provider at that point, was already giving me things of like, you need to start doing this, this, and this, since you had that history of hypertension, and just felt very cared for. So I uh, started my care with them, switched off between Terry and Amber each appointment. And what was I going to say? Oh, yeah. So was planning on hospital route with them. Every single appointment, I feel like the majority of the time was taken up by just talking through the fears that I had of the hospital. And it's like, okay, well, what if we get there and the policy says we can't do this? And like, what are we going to do? Or what if they say we can't, induce and my blood pressure is crazy high? It's like, am I going to be forced to have a C-section? What if, what if, what if? And it was my 28-week appointment. And Terry said, she was like, look, I do not recommend home births for just anybody because you have to have the right mindset and you have to be the right person. Like it's not for everybody. But anytime you pop into my mind, and she's like, I just have to say this, I just think this girl's not meant to birth in the hospital. She was like, I'm not trying to convince you one way or another because ultimately you have to make the decision. But she was like, all of your fears and all of your questions are hospital related. And she was like, you're just such an enigma because most people come to me because they had a horrible hospital birth and they want something completely different. And you're coming to me, you had a horrible hospital birth and you're wanting to go literally back to the same exact hospital. She was like, it's just interesting. And I want you to think about that. And, I kind of had the thing of like, well, I find comfort in knowing that every option that's available is there for me. And then that's when I had the light switch of, okay, but with Miles, pretty much every option that was available, I did have done to me. And it was a horrible experience. So then I started to think like, okay, well,
maybe I have too many options available.
I was like, is having all the options, like, is it really a good thing? I mean, obviously in some instances, yes, but I was like, is that really bringing me comfort or is it bringing me more, anxiety and whatever? So after that appointment, she was like, don't make a decision, just think about it. And so after that appointment, I did kind of start thinking of like, well, what could that look like? Once I got home and I was walking around my house, I started, kind of envisioning, okay, well, what would it look like if I was like laboring, here, here, here. And I felt such at peace. And then I asked my husband, and I feel like this is kind of where it sealed the deal for me because I was like, are you, because in my mind, I just was like, he would not be comfortable with a home birth. We never even talked about it. And I asked him and he was like, oh yeah. I was like, he's like, I think that'd be great. He was like, because he was so stressed out at the hospital too. He was like, selfishly, I'd love to not go back to the hospital. So I talked with my doula. I met with other women that had home birth VBACs. Again, such a research-minded person. I, got on my computer, was researching. Like literally, I was looking for any kind of study or research or whatever to tell me that a home birth VBAC was not safe. And most of what I found was most home birth VBACs, like they have a very high success rate. And so it's like I was looking for things to tell me it was not safe. And most actually reputable things did not say that.
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay. So I said, I think this is what we're going to do. And we did. And I guess we can like get into my birth story now with Evelyn.
Yeah. And like your pregnancy, like how was your blood pressure? Like how was all that?
Totally fine.
Yeah. And what were the suggestions that your midwife gave you?
So I did do, I know some people are like, don't want to do this, but I did do 2 baby aspirins every day up until, I don't know, it was at some point where she was like, hey, we need to stop it now. But I did do those because I don't like using the word crunchy because I feel like I'm somewhere in between. Scrunchy, I guess is what they would call it. In my mind, I was like, if this has any potential to prevent what happened last time, I will do it. I don't care if I'm taking a medication every single day. So I took baby aspirin. There was some, I think at that time, there was some like emerging research that my midwife had me doing L-arginine. Is that how you pronounce it? So I was taking that daily. High protein diet. I was aiming for like 100, 150 grams a day. More realistically, it was probably more like 90 a day, but I would hit that 100 a couple of times a week. Obviously, I was staying very hydrated, daily exercise, which I was already doing before. And then these are all things I like to say. Like, I can't say for certain that one specific thing helped or if it was just coincidence, but it doesn't hurt. My dad, as I mentioned to you before we started recording, is a holistic dentist, and they do it's a saliva test that tests for the top 5 oral pathogens. And so I did that before I even became pregnant. And 2 of the pathogens I tested high for, one of them is known for a correlation with pregnancy outcomes and preeclampsia. And so I did treat that. I tried treating it naturally. It didn't go away. So I did end up doing the antibiotic route, and it did go down.
And sorry, you said this was before you got pregnant the second time? Oh,
yeah, because I had known about this, and so I was like, I'm going to do whatever I possibly can to hopefully prevent this. So again, I don't know if anything helped, what didn't, but those are all the things that I did.
That's amazing.
And I had no high blood pressure at all. And
okay, for everyone listening, we're going to get her dad on the podcast so we can talk about all these things.
When you were talking about the benefits of like actually birthing and all that, there's so many things craniosacral and oral development wise so anyways,
great.
When I was already thinking, but had no high blood pressure entire pregnancy, very minimal swelling, just the normal amount that you swell when you're pregnant. I feel like I was the healthiest pre that pregnancy and throughout that pregnancy than I probably have been since like high school. So I was very happy about that because I was just like waiting, for it to spiking. I felt like I was checking it every day, but it was great. It was like 40 weeks in one day. I went, oh, sorry, my daughter's crying. She'll probably.
That's okay. Do you want me to pause?
No.
Okay.
She just needs to get it out of her system.
Alex has a sick little one, so.
Yeah, I think she's okay now. It was like 40 weeks in one day, about 2 a.m. I like kind of go into early labor. My contractions were like really weird. Right off the bat, they were about every 3 to 7 minutes, just depending, and like 30 to 45 seconds long. So it was like not really the norm, at least that I felt like you hear. And, we took like a really intensive birthing class with my doula, and it was just like, I don't know. So that's why I kind of was like, I must be in labor because I'm 40 weeks in one day, but this is just like weird. It's like, I don't know. I wasn't really convinced. But then that morning I was like, I think my mom needs to come get Miles. So she came and got him. I got in the bathtub. Timelines are so strange when you're in labor, but all I know, I was in the bathtub for a while, and all I know is around like 3, probably, my husband called my doula and they were talking, and he was sending them my contractions on the app, and they were just really weird. I felt like, and so she was like, well, I don't know, like I can come, and he was like, I don't know. She was like, put her on the phone, like let me hear what she sounds like. And so he did, and she was like, because I felt, I mean, I know people don't like to use the word pain, but like I was in pain at that point. And whatever I sounded like, she was like, yeah, we'll be on our way. So she and my midwife, Amber, got there probably like 4:30. They got the birthing tub ready. I got in the birthing tub, so it was probably like, I don't know. I probably got in the birthing tub at like 4:30, 4:45. And birth for a while, I just like, I felt like contractions were weird. I had so much pain in my back. So then they do end up checking baby, she head down, but sunny side up, so OP, um, which is like what her face was like towards my back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she's like facing your, no, she's facing upwards.
Yeah, facing my,
you're like spine to spine.
yeah. And so, which would make sense for like the kind of weird contractions and the back pain. So she did end up manually rotating her, and that helped a lot with the back pain. But I felt like it was a minute. I'm sure it was more like an hour. So she flipped back.
Mm.
And she just like, they checked me at one point. My water hadn't broken, and they did end up breaking my water for me to try and just like get her to like, because she wasn't coming down.
Mm.
And I lost my train of thought. I did end up having them check me at one point, and I was like 10 centimeters.
Mm-hmm.
This was like 5 o'clock, and I was like dying. Yeah. And I remember we joke about it now, because so that was at 5 o'clock. She was born at 11:30 p.m. And so I remember like at that point, they were like, okay, like you are in transition. And all we had learned in our birthing class was like, when you hit the point, which I was at the point, when you hit the point of like, I can't do this anymore, you're like most likely in transition. You're like at the end, you're almost there. And so my husband kept encouraging me, being like, you're almost there. Like, you're almost there. We're almost at the end. And it was like, whatever, however, 5, 6 hours later when she finally came, I remember at one point being like, you have been saying that for hours. Like, we are not almost there. Like, it's been 5 hours. We joke about it now. But because of that OP position, it's just like she was not in distress. There was no emergency, like whatsoever. She
Sometimes
just like,
it just takes longer to mold that way,
yes,
you know?
yes. And I remember at one point being like, this is my life. I will be in labor for the rest of my life. And I'm the first woman that just like, she's not going to come out. And that's just what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But, and who knows? Because nobody mentioned anything about Miles being in an OP position. But my midwife did mention like afterwards when we debriefed, she was like, you might just have like a shape that likes to put babies in that position. But that obviously does not mean you can have a vaginal birth, because she finally came.
Yeah, with enough patience, you know?
Yeah, yes. Well, so much patience. I couldn't even believe how long my providers were there, and they were so, I mean, they would check on me, but they were so hands off, whatever I needed. Like so much patience, which would not have happened in the hospital. And she came,
Mm-hmm.
and there was no issues. I think had I been in the hospital, I really believe I probably would have ended up in a repeat C-section. Mm-hmm. I really do. I mean, I can't say for sure, but there was, never any emergency whatsoever. It was just, she needed time.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. What was like birth of placenta went smoothly, and your breastfeeding relationship? How was that? Did you get better advice this time?
Oh, yes. And I knew
and you had a long breastfeeding relationship, but
yeah, well, yes, but absolutely. The placenta, I remember after she came out, having this like moment of fear, because obviously with Miles, I didn't birth the placenta, of like, oh my gosh, no, I have to like birth something else. And it was literally nothing.
Oh, that's great to hear. Because some women are like, this is so unfair. Like,
I was like embarrassed by how anxious I was once I was like, oh, okay, that's it. Yeah. That was so easy. That went great. Breastfeeding with her went great. I was not nearly as stressed as I was with Miles, but just with having that past experience, I was so like anal about it. And I had my own baby scale. I remember at one point my lactation consultant was like, your homework for the week is to hide the baby scale and not but she's very small, very petite. She was always on her growth curve. But because she was so small, I was convinced, that we were going to have a repeat. She did end up having a tongue and lip tie release, but that was a perfectly fine experience. It was not bad at all. Which you'll have to I don't know if you deal a lot with tongue and lip ties, but you'll have to talk to my dad about that as well,
Yeah,
because it is.
I'd love
I
to.
work with him, and so I have so the biggest eye roll for the tongue and lip tie business that's going on right now. It's
Yeah, I would love to chat with him
anyway.
about it.
She did actually have ties, and it was a great experience.
Yeah. I'm curious if you have reflected on your self-proclaimed like need to control the situation and be in control and how that like tipped you towards the hospital and reflecting on like how much control choosing home actually
Yeah,
gives you.
yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, that is interesting because while I definitely had the moments of like, oh my gosh, this is never going to end. Like, what is going on? Like whatever. I never once felt out of control. And I never once felt like scared or had any distrust for like, I think that if you're going to do a home birth, I think that having the right team and having full trust in that team is key, because I felt enough confidence in Amber, my midwife, of as long as she's cool and collected and saying we're fine, I know for darn sure like we are fine. I don't even have to think about it. So there was never a moment where I was second guessing or doubting anything. And I think that played a huge, huge part of it because I had complete trust in her.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, no, never once I felt in control the
Mhm.
whole time. I mean, as much as you can.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Beautiful. Oh. Is
Yeah.
there anything else that we haven't touched on or anything you would like to say to someone maybe planning their first birth or even considering, a VBAC at home?
I will say, because this is, I feel like, the number one question, at least for me, that I had when talking to people that had home births, of like, at least for me, I was like so scared of not having the epidural as an option.
Mm.
And I remember asking so many people of like, do you feel like it was doable? Like obviously it was doable because you did it, but it's like, would you do it again? Like how terrible was it?
Yeah.
And like I think had I been in the hospital, I can say with probably about 95% certainty I probably would have given it and gotten the epidural. But it's like this weird psychological thing of, because it wasn't even an option, I don't I didn't even think about it.
Yeah, I
Not
can relate to that.
I wish we were at the hospital now so I could get the epidural, or I might need to call it and go to the hospital so I can get the epidural. It was not even a thought in my mind.
Yeah,
Like,
I can relate to that. It's like and in hindsight, you're like, I get it. Like I could see how I would be like, oh, it's sitting right there. Yes, please. But I
yes,
also didn't think about it at all. But
think
I was
about it.
like, I get it why people are like, hello, sign me up.
I get it. I think I would have absolutely. I mean, I did with Miles. I think I absolutely would have if I was in the hospital. But like the question of, is it doable? 100% absolutely doable. I don't feel like I have a high pain tolerance, and I did it. And if we have another child, I would absolutely do it again. So that's like what I wanted to hear from people. It's like I want people to tell me straight up, like it is doable, and I would do it again.
Yeah,
And it is, and I would.
that's
So
awesome.
yeah,
Mhm.
totally.
Great. Well, thank you so much for sharing your stories, and we'll for sure message your dad and see if
Yeah, 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 absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I love sharing this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like something women, I feel like for the most part, love talking about, is like we'll remember our births forever. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for listening. You can find us at Born Wild Podcast on Instagram. For inquiries or feedback, you can email us at bornwildpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me, Emma Ray, on Instagram at Emma Ray, REA.
Sophia at sophiabirth.com.
And me, Leah, at Bay Area Home Birth.
We would really appreciate it if you would rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. It helps us reach more people. And as always,
Stay wild.